Welcome to another episode of Chaotic Torture Tech Tips Sunday. This is the first video I've done for the year. Meant to get one last week for the New Year's. Have been sick. Everybody in the house has been sick, a lot of coughing and stuff, so wasn't able to get a chance to record. So I hope everybody had some good holidays and a great New Year. So now I'm going to go back to, in the first video of this series, we was setting up the camber on a Associated TC3 touring car. We're converting this to a drift. I just want to do this to show people that you don't have to go buy a specific drift car to drift with. Alright, so if you didn't catch what camber and stuff, the adjustments, how they helped and where they benefited at, you can go watch my last episode of Tech Tips Sunday and it'll explain the things that I did for that and why. Now for this episode, I'm going to show locking the rear diff on this. Some people will lock front and rear. For this setup, I'm just going to lock the rear. I'm going to leave the front unlocked. And what locking the rear diff is going to allow this to do is have more pull and control in the rear to help kick it around. It'll keep it a constant posi track as you're trying to slide it. I've already went ahead and pulled the rear end apart on this, so you don't have to watch me go through the process of it. And there are several different ways, depending on the manufacturer of your RC. This one, you can tighten it down. It's got a ball diff. You can tighten it down super tight, and the tighter you crank it, and it'll be the same for a lot of them. It'll lock this to where you can't spin and slip it. Other types of diffs on some of the Tamiya cars and stuff will be a little bit different. You can actually fill them with a JB Weld or an epoxy of some sort, or even hot glue will hold them. Now this one I cranked tight, and I went ahead around this part of the gear and used some Gorilla Super Glue just to glue the plastic to that, just in case there was ever enough torque that it would want to loosen that screw up some. It's going to stay locked. I don't race touring cars. I don't do anything for a touring car race. So this being locked isn't going to hurt me any. And it being a permanent lock, I'm fine with. I have extra gears if I want to take and switch it back to a open diff. And like I said, I tore all this down before making the video, just so you all didn't have to watch me do it. Now this is my pinion gear, and this is the gear that catches on my diff that I've locked. I didn't change or do anything to this, but I will go ahead and put everything back in its case. You have to excuse me if I'm a little sniffly or congested sounding. Like I said, everybody in the household caught a really bad cold over the holidays, and I'm actually still sick. Anyways, put the screws back in. I did all the disassembly off camera. Didn't figure anybody wanted to watch the dismantling of the actual gear set itself. Let me see if I can find the right size wrench over here somewhere. And as I also mentioned in my last video, I would show you all one of the tools that I use for adjusting my control arm bars. That's the upper link here for setting my camber. When I was doing the first video, I didn't have all the tools that are specific for this car out at the time, so I couldn't get a video of how I was doing that or what I was doing for it. Sorry for the boring part of this, but with everything in the hobby, as you tear it down, you ultimately have to put it back together. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I did save a little bit of time by doing the pre-tear down. And this part's just going to, it's got its own place down here where everything sits, and it's going to mount. The upper shock tower mounts to the upper portion of this. Just have to be sure I've got everything lined up right and how it should be before I tighten anything down permanently. And if drifting isn't your thing, I'm sorry. I've only got a couple more videos in this series that I'm going to do, and then I will get back to something different for tech tips. If you have any suggestions or anything that you would like to see advice on, feel free to leave a comment, and if it's something I can help with, I'll definitely add it to the list of things to do for a Tech Tip Sunday. I just figured I'd do this as a lot of people are starting to run RCs indoors through the winter months and stuff, and I've heard a lot of people that are interested and curious about drift cars, but don't want to spend the money on them, but also happen to have old touring cars laying around. You can do this with any touring car. The only difference is with some of your actual true drift cars, you'll get more steering throw on them, which, you know, on this you're not going to get the most, but it will still drift and get the job done. So it's not you absolutely have to have this or that to be able to drift successfully. That's not how it works for the hobby. Now I'm going to flip this around. Oh, dropped my shaft. Don't want to do that because I'm at the point where I will need it. If you're doing a shaft-driven chassis like this one is, this is where you're going to want to be sure that you have it in and locked in place, because I'm getting ready to attach the bottom screws to the rear diff case or housing. Maybe I am. You have to excuse my rude dogs there in the other room. Trying to keep everybody else quiet while I'm doing this, and they're doing their thing. Just to save time in the video, I'll just put the 2 in for right now. I can come back and get the other 2 later on. Took me a little minute to realize how this went back on. It's been a while since I've tore a Associated down this far. And before you any car that you're working on, after you get your pieces lined up, be sure you got your drive shaft in before you tighten anything down. Because if you don't have your drive shaft in, then you got to just tear it all back apart to get your drive shaft back in. So just take a few moments, do a little looking around, being sure that you got everything where you need it to be. Can save you a lot of hassle and headache later down the road. I've made these simple mistakes enough in the past that I still make the mistakes sometimes, but I try to double check and remember them now. I won't lie, I've been doing the YouTube thing for a year. I still feel a little flustered and nervous at times while working on camera. I don't mind speaking, but doing the work makes me a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable. Just, I don't want to give the wrong information out. Don't want to do something wrong to teach anybody else a bad habit or something that's going to be wrong. Alright, I still got a couple screws to go, but technically this is good to go. And as you see, as I turn this wheel here, this wheel's turning with it. If I hold it, I'm not able to turn it. It stops. So the tightening of the diff and the glue that I used worked as it should. Now, as I said in the last episode, I was going to show you all the adjustments I use for the turnbuckle. Associated's nice. They actually send the proper tools. Even though they're plastic, it fits in there, so you can make your adjustments tightening or loosening either way. So that's what I use to adjust that. Excuse me. Had I not had that, I would use a pair of pliers, and you just one at a time. Or for those of you all that have Traxxas tools, some of the small Traxxas wrenches will fit these. But for right now, I've got, if you look at my front end, you see the camber's tilted. Look at that one. Let me straighten the wheel. It's got camber on that. It's tilted out. Let me double check. I think I set this at max camber for, yeah, all four tires are at -10 on this, which is the max that this can do. Now if you were running touring, you wouldn't want that, but for drift, it'll have its advantages. I explained them in the first video. So I'm going to end this video now, and in the next video I'll have the motor and everything set up in it, and we will go outside and be running this. Because basically all you need to do is get some sort of drift tire. These are a hard rubber. They're a little grippy, but I'm going to put some brushless power in this, so they'll do just fine. Like I said, I recommend the locking of at least the rear diff. Some people lock the front diff. If you had a shaft or a belt driven vehicle, sometimes you can change your gear in the front, change your gearing pulleys and different belts. So then you'll get what they call counter steer, where the front's pulling differently than the rear, and that helps the rear slide around better. With shaft, you don't get that. I feel belt drive is smoother than shaft, but shaft drive will work, and that's why I picked this one to show you, because the associated touring cars are very common. A lot of people have these. They either used to race or try it on road, maybe didn't like it, tossed it up on a shelf, didn't do nothing else with it. Well, now, if you ever have a desire, or you say, well, I'd like to have a drift car, or I'd like to try to drift, this is the cheapest way to get into drifting if you already have the car. Even if you don't have the car, these are cheap. Cheaper than some of the high-end drift cars. You don't have the counter steer, and you don't have as much steering throw. But like I said, I will show you the next video that this will drift and will work just fine. You don't have to have the high-end stuff for drifting, especially if you're just experimenting or just getting into it. So thank you all for watching. This concludes another episode of Tech Tips Sunday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And I'm sorry this was a long, drawn-out, kind of dull video with me doing some wrenching into the quiet time. And I apologize for not getting any videos out before now. Thank you all for your patience and your time.